Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a book that's, it's kind of like a cheat sheet for how our minds work, especially when it comes to making those big decisions.
Yeah.
We're looking at Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, a classic.
And we'll be focusing on, how recognizing your own decision-making processes.
Right.
And those of your colleagues and your clients and even your competitors.
Your competitors.
And really give you an edge in the business world.
Yeah, what's fascinating about this book is that it doesn't just describe these mental processes.
Right.
It gives us like a framework for understanding them.
Okay.
Kahneman introduces this idea of two systems in our minds, System 1 and System 2, and shows how they're constantly kind of interacting, shaping our thoughts and actions.
Okay, so let's break down these two systems.
Yeah.
So it sounds like System 1 is the fast, intuitive one.
Right.
The one that relies on, gut feelings and quick judgments. So is that right?
Yeah. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, effortlessly. Think of it as your brain's autopilot.
Okay.
It relies on heuristics and mental shortcuts to navigate the world.
Right.
It's great for, making snap decisions, but it doesn't always have all the facts.
And that's where System 2 comes in.
Yes.
The more thoughtful, the more deliberate system.
Precisely.
Yeah.
System 2 is the slower, more analytical part of our minds.
Okay.
It can weigh in evidence. Yeah. It considers different perspectives, and it can override those impulsive urges from System 1.
Right.
But here's the catch. System 2 is often lazy.
Oh, so it's like me.
Haha, right?
Yeah.
It requires effort to engage it.
Okay.
And we often just default to System 1, especially when we're under pressure or facing those really complex situations.
So in a business context,
yeah.
Let's say if I'm negotiating a deal.
Okay.
And I immediately feel drawn to a particular offer.
Right.
That's probably System 1 at play.
Most likely, yeah.
But if I take the time to analyze the terms carefully,
yes,
and I consider alternative options, and maybe even consult with my team,
right,
that's System 2.
Yeah, that's System 2 kicking in.
Kicking in.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
And it highlights why understanding these systems is so crucial for business professionals.
Okay.
By recognizing when System 1 is driving the decision.
Right.
You can consciously engage System 2 to make more strategic choices.
Okay.
Much better choices, usually.
That's great. This reminds me of something I read in the book.
Yeah.
Kahneman calls it WYSIT.
Yes.
What you see is all there is.
I love that acronym.
Yeah, me too.
It's so catchy.
So is that essentially how System 1 operates?
Yeah.
It makes decisions based on the limited information it has at hand.
Absolutely.
Without necessarily digging deeper.
System 1 is prone to jumping to conclusions based on whatever information is readily available.
Okay.
Even if that information is incomplete or biased, and this can lead us down the wrong path, especially in business, where our decisions often have long-term consequences.
Yeah, so how do we avoid falling into these cognitive traps?
That's the big question.
Is it simply a matter of being aware of System 1's limitations?
Well, awareness is a crucial first step.
Yeah.
But Kahneman goes further. He outlines specific cognitive biases that can really distort our thinking.
Yeah.
And understanding these biases is like having a cheat sheet for spotting mental shortcuts that lead to bad decisions.
So let's talk about some of these biases.
Okay.
I've heard of the availability heuristic.
Oh, yeah.
Is that one we should be particularly wary of in business?
Definitely.
Okay.
The availability heuristic describes our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easy to recall, often because they're vivid or recent or emotionally charged.
Right.
So, for example, imagine you just read a news article about a company going bankrupt. You might be more likely to perceive a higher risk of investing in similar businesses.
Yeah.
Even if the overall market data suggests otherwise.
Wow. So our perceptions of risk and opportunity can be skewed by what's readily available in our minds rather than a more objective assessment.
Precisely.
Of the situation.
And this can have significant implications for things like investment decisions, risk assessments, and even hiring practices.
It sounds like we need to be careful about relying too heavily on anecdotal evidence.
Yes.
Or gut feelings.
Absolutely.
Especially when making important business decisions.
That's right.
Right.
While intuition can be valuable, it's essential to balance it with a more data-driven and analytical approach.
Okay.
Kahneman really emphasizes the importance of statistical thinking, using data and probabilities to make more informed judgments.
I imagine that's easier said than done.
It is.
Our brains aren't exactly wired for statistical thinking.
They're not.
Are they?
And Kahneman highlights several biases that can trip us up when it comes to statistics. For example, we tend to overgeneralize from small samples of data.
Right.
He calls this the law of small numbers fallacy.
Okay, so just because a particular marketing campaign was successful with a small test group,
right,
it doesn't necessarily guarantee it will be a hit with a larger audience.
Exactly. We need to be cautious about extrapolating from limited data and look for statistically significant trends before making major decisions.
This is fascinating stuff.
It is.
So we've got System 1 and System 2 constantly battling it out in our minds.
Right.
And then we have these pesky cognitive biases that can further distort our thinking.
And they're always there lurking.
It's starting to feel like making sound decisions is an uphill battle.
It can feel that way, especially in the fast-paced world of business. But that's why understanding these concepts is so empowering.
Right.
By recognizing our mental shortcuts and biases, we can start to develop strategies for making more rational and effective choices.
So how do we do that? How do we actually start applying these insights from thinking fast and slow to improve their decision-making in a practical way?
Well, that's a great question, and that's what we're going to delve into next. Kahneman offers several practical solutions, including techniques for challenging our assumptions, seeking out different perspectives, and designing systems that kind of nudge us towards more rational choices.
I can't wait to hear more about those solutions.
We'll get into all that. So before we went away, we were talking about how to kind of, avoid these pitfalls of System 1 thinking and cognitive biases. And, we want to try to make more strategic choices.
I'm really eager to learn how to put this knowledge into practice. I mean, should we always distrust our intuition?
That's a good question.
And rely solely on data-driven decisions?
Well, not necessarily. Intuition has its place, especially for those with deep expertise in a specific field. But it's crucial to recognize that even seasoned professionals, they can be susceptible to these biases too. So Kahneman advocates for techniques that kind of force us to slow down and engage System 2.
So can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Sure.
In a business setting?
Let's imagine you're a CEO. And you're evaluating a potential acquisition. Your initial excitement, probably fueled by System 1, might make the deal seem like a no-brainer. But, before jumping in, Kahneman suggests considering what he calls the outside view.
The outside view? What is that exactly?
It's about taking a step back from that immediate situation and looking at the broader context. So in this case, you would research similar acquisitions in your industry.
Analyze their success rates? Identify potential pitfalls?
So instead of getting caught up in the hype of this particular deal, I should look at the bigger picture. Consider historical data and industry trends.
And this helps you counteract that optimism bias that often comes with new ventures. Another technique is to actively challenge your assumptions.
So for this acquisition, I might ask myself, what if the target company's growth isn't as sustainable as it seems?
Or what are the hidden risks that we might be overlooking? By actively seeking out information that challenges those assumptions. You force System 2 to engage in a more critical analysis.
This reminds me of the confirmation bias. Where we tend to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs. And kind of ignore the evidence that contradicts them.
Absolutely.
It sounds like we need to actively fight against that.
You do.
Another technique is to seek out diverse perspectives. Surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to disagree with you.
That can be tough. For a CEO.
Especially for a CEO.
We're often surrounded by people who tell us what we want to hear.
It's a challenge, but it's crucial for avoiding groupthink. And making well-informed decisions. So, encourage constructive criticism, create a culture where diverse viewpoints are valued.
These are all great strategies for engaging System 2.
Yeah, they are.
And making more thoughtful decisions.
Right.
But what about those specific cognitive biases we talked about earlier?
Yes.
How can we avoid falling prey to those?
So Kahneman provides several tools for this,
Okay.
for recognizing and mitigating these biases.
Okay.
Let's revisit the anchoring effect,
Wow.
which we briefly touched on earlier.
Yes, the anchoring effect.
Yeah.
Where the first piece of information we receive,
Right.
even if it's arbitrary,
It can be totally arbitrary.
can unduly influence our subsequent judgments.
Yes. This bias is especially prevalent in negotiations.
Okay.
So let's say you're negotiating the price of a new software system
Okay.
for your company,
Uh-huh.
and the vendor throws out like a ridiculously high initial price.
Right.
So they're anchoring your perception.
Wow. So even if I know that initial price is inflated, it's still going to affect my perception of a fair price.
It's remarkably powerful
Right.
to combat this.
Yeah.
Try to set your own anchor first.
Okay.
Do your research,
Uh-huh.
determine a fair price range,
Right.
and propose a counteroffer that reflects your assessment,
Okay.
not the vendor's anchor.
That makes a lot of sense.
Good.
But what about loss aversion?
Yeah.
That deep-seated fear of losing something,
Yeah.
even if it means missing out on a greater potential gain.
It's a powerful one.
How can we overcome that?
Loss aversion can be tricky to overcome,
Okay.
but awareness is key.
Uh-huh.
Remember, we feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equal gain.
So a loss of $100 feels worse than a gain of $100 feels good,
Exactly.
even though objectively they're equivalent.
Right. And this can lead us to make overly cautious decisions.
Yeah.
To counteract this,
Yeah.
try to reframe the situation.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on what you might lose,
Uh-huh.
emphasize the potential gains
Okay.
from taking a calculated risk.
So in that earlier example
Yeah.
of the marketing campaign,
Uh-huh.
instead of dwelling on the potential 20% customer loss,
Yeah.
I should focus on the 50% chance
Right.
of doubling my customer base.
Precisely.
Okay.
Shifting your focus from loss to potential gain
Uh-huh.
can help you make more objective decisions.
Yeah.
Another powerful bias to be aware of is the framing effect.
Right. Framing.
Yeah.
How the way information is presented can influence our choices,
It really can.
even if the underlying options are the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kahneman highlights how framing can be used in marketing to kind of nudge consumers towards specific choices.
I've definitely seen that.
Yeah.
Like when a product is advertised as 90% fat-free,
Uh-huh.
it seems much healthier
It does.
than if it's labeled as containing 10% fat,
Right.
even though it's the same product.
Exactly. It's all about the framing.
Right.
As business professionals,
Yeah.
we need to be aware of how framing can be used
Uh-huh.
to manipulate our perceptions.
Okay.
So when evaluating information,
Yeah.
try to strip away the framing
Uh-huh.
and focus on the underlying facts and data.
So whether we're analyzing market trends,
Right.
negotiating a deal, or evaluating a new product launch,
Uh-huh.
understanding these cognitive biases can help us make
They can.
more rational and effective choices.
Absolutely.
Right.
And while we can't completely eliminate these biases,
Yeah.
we can learn to recognize them
Yeah.
and implement strategies to mitigate their influence.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Good.
Is there anything else we can do to improve our decision-making processes?
There is.
Yeah.
Beyond recognizing these biases, one of the most powerful tools
Yeah.
Kahneman introduces is the concept of a risk policy.
A risk policy.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's essentially a set of predetermined guidelines
Okay.
for making decisions,
Uh-huh.
especially those involving risk and uncertainty.
So instead of relying on our intuition
Right.
in the heat of a moment,
Yeah.
we should have a plan in place.
Exactly.
Okay.
A risk policy forces you to define your tolerance for risk.
Mm-hmm.
Identify potential biases
Right.
that might be clouding your judgment
Right.
and establish clear decision-making criteria.
So it's like having a safety net.
Yeah, it's a great analogy
Yeah.
that helps you avoid making those impulsive or emotionally driven choices.
This sounds like a valuable tool for any business leader.
It is.
But creating a comprehensive risk policy
Yeah,
seems like it will require a lot of effort
it
and
does.
self-awareness.
But the payoff can be immense,
Okay.
especially when you're dealing with these complex business decisions.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from a reactive mindset
Right.
to a proactive one,
Okay.
where you're consciously shaping your decision-making process.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how thinking fast and slow
Yeah.
isn't just about understanding our minds.
Yeah.
It's about giving us the tools to make better decisions
Yes.
in all aspects of our lives,
Exactly.
especially in business.
It has broad applications.
It does.
Yeah.
So welcome back to the deep dive.
Uh,
We've been exploring thinking fast and slow.
Yes.
And how understanding our decision-making process can lead to better outcomes. In business.
Yeah, in all aspects of life, really.
Yeah.
But especially in the business world.
Yeah, and before we went away, we were discussing the power of a risk policy.
Right.
To kind of guide us through those really difficult choices. So are there other takeaways from the book?
There are many.
That can help us become better decision makers.
One of the most fascinating things that Kahneman explores is this interplay between our experiencing self and our remembering self.
Two selves?
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
It is.
Could you explain the distinction?
Yeah. So think about a recent project you worked on.
Okay.
The experiencing self is the one who lived through each moment, felt the highs and lows, experienced the project in real time.
So it's about the actual journey, the day-to-day experience of working on the project.
But then there's the remembering self, the one who tells the story of that project later on. This self focuses on the key moments, the peak experiences, and the final outcome. It constructs a narrative that might not fully capture the nuances of the actual experience.
I see. So it's like how we tend to remember vacations based on the highlights.
Exactly.
The amazing meals, the stunning views. Even if there were some stressful moments or travel hiccups along the way.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Kahneman argues that our remembering self often has more influence on our future decisions than our experiencing self.
Why is that?
Because memories are so powerful. They shape our perceptions of the past, which in turn influence our expectations for the future. So we tend to base our decisions on what we remember, not necessarily on what we actually experience.
So if I remember a particular project as being highly successful, I might be more inclined to take on similar projects in the future.
You might.
Even if the day-to-day reality of that project is quite stressful or challenging.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this applies to all sorts of decisions, from choosing a career path to evaluating business opportunities. We need to be aware of how our memories can color our judgment. And try to factor in the full spectrum of our experiences.
The good and the bad.
Yeah, both the good and the bad.
It's a reminder to be more present and mindful of our experiences in the moment.
Absolutely.
So we can make choices that truly align with our values and preferences. Not just our memories. Another key takeaway from the book is the importance of understanding the limitations of expert intuition.
Yes, very important.
And earlier we discussed, how intuition can be valuable. Especially for those with deep expertise. Are you saying we shouldn't trust expert intuition at all?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
Kahneman acknowledges that true experts can develop a remarkable ability to make those quick, accurate judgments in their domain of expertise.
Okay.
However, he cautions that even expert intuition has its limits.
So when can we trust expert intuition?
Right.
And when should we be more skeptical?
So Kahneman argues that expert intuition is most reliable in environments that are predictable and provide consistent feedback. So think of a seasoned chess player. Or a firefighter who's trained to respond to emergencies. They've encountered countless scenarios and have developed a deep understanding of the patterns and cues that lead to success.
So in those fields, years of experience and deliberate practice can really hone intuition into a valuable tool.
Precisely. However, in fields that are more complex or unpredictable or lack clear feedback mechanisms, expert intuition can be less reliable. Kahneman points to economic forecasting or political punditry as examples where predictions are often no better than chance, despite the supposed expertise of those making them.
So we should be wary of anyone claiming to have infallible intuition.
We should.
Especially in fields where the future is inherently uncertain.
Exactly. It's essential to evaluate the track record of any expert. Consider the context in which their intuition was developed. And even then, it's always wise to combine that expert judgment with data and analysis.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
Into thinking fast and slow.
A great book.
As we wrap up,
Yeah.
what's the one key message
Okay.
you hope our listeners take away from this book?
For me, the most important message
Okay.
is that we are all susceptible to these cognitive biases.
Right.
They're not signs of weakness
Yeah.
or stupidity. They're simply part of the human condition.
Okay.
The key is to recognize them,
Uh-huh.
understand their origins,
Yeah.
and develop strategies to mitigate their influence.
It's like we're all playing this game
Yeah.
with a set of loaded dice.
I like that.
We can't change the dice,
Right.
but we can learn how to play the game
You can.
more strategically.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And thinking fast and slow gives us the tools to become more aware players,
Right.
capable of making choices that are more rational, more informed,
Yeah.
and ultimately more aligned with our goals and values.
Absolutely. It's a must-read for anyone
It is.
who wants to improve their decision-making,
Yeah,
navigate the complexities of the business world,
absolutely.
and ultimately live a more successful and fulfilling life.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
My pleasure.
into the fascinating world of thinking fast and slow.